How many quarterbacks should go in round one of your Superflex drafts? We'll tell you next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Michael Fabiano. You can follow him on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. You can also check out all of his great work over on SI. And on today's show, we are going to be conducting a round one Superflex mock draft. We're going to discuss how many quarterbacks should go in round one of your mocks or of your drafts, how many running backs will be picked, where does the first receiver land, all that and so much more. So, Fabs, you're going to get us started with pick number 101 in this Superflex mock. Who you taking?
It's got to be Josh Allen. I mean, the guy is a virtual guarantee to score you 390 fantasy points every single season. He's in the prime of his career. He is a quarterback who not only has a big arm, but can also run with the football. We've seen him year in and year out just load up the stat sheets in terms of both categories. And he's basically, as reliable as death and taxes. We know Josh Allen is going to put up great numbers from a fantasy standpoint. Jaden Daniels is certainly a lot younger, but I wouldn't take him one overall here. Josh Allen would be the cornerstone of my Superflex Dynasty startup if I had the number one overall pick, and I would not think twice about drafting him.
So I want to combine these next two players together. I'm taking Lamar Jackson at pick 102. Jackson and Allen rely on their legs so much for fantasy production. These guys are getting double-digit touchdowns every single year on the ground. Lamar Jackson's basically giving you 800, 900 rushing yards every single season. How much does that concern you with them moving forward? Because right now, I believe Josh Allen is 29. Lamar will be 29, I believe, this year. Do you think, obviously they're not going to be able to sustain this kind of rushing production in the 30s, but how big of a drop-off is coming?
If you're talking about a player who's, run the football so successfully at the quarterback position, you're looking at build too. And Josh Allen's just a bigger dude. And Josh Allen could actually dish out punishment. Yeah. Lamar Jackson, I worry about him a little bit more. I'm not saying that he's frail, because he's certainly not. But he is not, in terms of the size, Josh Allen. Maybe his body is not going to be able to sustain the punishment of being a running quarterback over the course of an entire NFL career as someone like Josh Allen. Mike Vick did it for a long, long time. So that doesn't really concern me too much. But I think that's
Mike Vick had a part of his career where he didn't have to worry about the wear and tear on his body, right? Like he had a 3-year absence.
Right, exactly. But I would say that if I had to choose between Allen and Jackson, they're both such just spectacular quarterbacks. Having the mindset that Allen's build is maybe a little bit more conducive to taking more punishment and avoiding injuries than Jackson's, I think that's probably a good reason why, and a big reason why Allen goes 1 for me and Jackson would go 2.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I would take Allen 1, Jackson 2, but I don't really have any concerns about either. I was just more talking about, like, at what point do we expect the rushing production to dip low enough where these guys aren't the number 1 and number 2 picks? And I still think we have a ways to get there.
I think you've got time. Yeah, there's no question about that. Once we get these guys into their mid 30s, talking 33, 34, then, maybe it's not going to be a season with 700 rushing yards and 15 touchdowns, as we've seen certainly from Josh Allen. That starts to decline a little bit. Actually, that's a really good possible research.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking off the top of my head, like,
go back and look, right? And see. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I was thinking of like guys that were mobile, like more like Lamar Jackson. I was thinking like of Randall Cunningham, who had maybe his best season at age like 35 with the Vikings. So
Right.
it's
But he did a lot of his damage as a passer that year. Remember, he had Randy
right.
Moss and Chris Carter. Like, I actually, funny story, the first year that I played fantasy football was 98. And 98 was the year that Randall was the quarterback of the Vikings. He was a backup to Brad Johnson. And Brad Johnson got hurt. And Brad Johnson was my quarterback in that league. And I happened to pick up Randall Cunningham off waivers and ended up winning. I had Terrell Davis, who rushed for over 2,000 yards that year, and Fred Taylor on that team. And I traded Jerome Bettis and Michael Irvin to get Fred Taylor. I'll never forget that, because I actually mentioned that to Irv years later when I worked with him at NFL Network. And I talked about that with Fred Taylor. I actually was able to interview Fred and TD. And those were my two running backs from my first ever fantasy football league and my first championship.
I think the point that I was trying to make is that, like, Randall didn't run as much in the middle part of his 30s, but he became a really good pocket passer.
Yep.
And I think we've already seen Lamar take steps there where he can win just from being in the pocket. He doesn't have to use his legs to be an effective quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised if Lamar is able to do something similar when we get to the middle 30s of his career. Let's go to pick 103 here. And this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Who do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jaden Daniels over Jalen Hurts. And the big part of it is obviously the youth, coming out and having one of the great rookie seasons of all time. From a quarterback fantasy football perspective, he was phenomenal. Is there a sophomore slump coming? I mean, listen, nothing would surprise me. Nothing would surprise me in the NFL. I always say the only thing that's predictable about the NFL is its unpredictability, but he's young. He is the face of a franchise already after year one. He is going to be running the football for a long, long time. We know that's a big part of his game, and you know how much I love these rushing quarterbacks. So I will go with Daniels just slightly ahead of Jalen Hurts, and it's all about age. I'm going to get a few more years from Daniels than I will Hurts at this point.
I'm taking Jalen Hurts pick at 1-4. It's funny that these are two quarterbacks from the NFC East, but to me, it's Jalen Hurts is only 26. I believe Jaden Daniels is 24. He's going to be 25 this year. So there's not a massive age gap between these two guys. And Jalen Hurts has run for 52 touchdowns over the last 4 years. We'll see what the tush push does. We'll see how that affects him. But I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. On top of that, Fabs, this is one of the best run organizations in the NFL with Howie Roseman and the Eagles. They're going to put talent around him. I love that I got Jalen Hurts at pick 4. And in fact, I think you can have a conversation about Jalen Hurts versus Lamar Jackson just because of the rushing touchdowns and the age. He's several years younger. But I think if you have a top 4 pick, I think you're loving where you're at because it guarantees you one of these 4 quarterbacks.
No doubt about it. And that's kind of where you'd like to be because it's really nice to have. And what do these 4 quarterbacks have in common? Run. They are dual threat guys, and we want dual threat guys in fantasy. And to have one of these 4 quarterbacks be your QB1 in a dynasty startup for several years to come, that's absolutely just massive. And that gives you a nice advantage, certainly, over the competition. Because while there are good quarterbacks in the league, I feel like these 4 guys, and, we're going to certainly talk about Joe Burrow here, I'm sure, shortly, but those 4 guys, like, those are the players that to me are on that first tier in terms of dynasty startups. And you're in a Superflex league, they're even more valuable.
And if you can choose your draft spot in one of these Superflex drafts, try to get one of the top 4 picks. I don't know if there's any big advantage to having 1 versus 4, just because if you're at 4, you're going to be able to draft sooner, right? Assuming it's a snake draft. This is the clear-cut tier 1. Things get really interesting with this next group of players. We'll tell you who should be the 5th overall pick in your drafts next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or your family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize that you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without all the stress. And with the money that you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even just invite a bigger group to come with you. And Gametime makes it all possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. And prices on the app actually go down the closer that you get to first pitch. And they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. I love that I can see a panoramic view of my seats in the app before you buy. It makes the entire process so easy. 2 clicks and you are done. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are doing a round 1 Superflex mock draft. The first 4 picks: Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, and Jalen Hurts. Fabs, you are on the clock here at pick 105. Who are you taking?
This is where I'm going to go away from quarterback. And obviously the next best quarterback would be Burrow. But I'm going to go with Jamar Chase here. Jamar Chase is coming off of a magical season. And, I've talked about how, maybe that 17 touchdown mark is not going to be something he can duplicate and probably won't. But every year he's been in the NFL, he's been extremely productive. He's just entering the prime of his career. He's got a great quarterback in the aforementioned Burrow throwing him the football, a great offense. It hasn't mattered that T. Higgins is in the offense as well. Chase is always going to get his. And I think these two guys are going to make beautiful fantasy music together for a long, long time. I mean, you talk about a couple of guys who have a rapport dating back to their time at LSU. They know each other. Joe Burrow knows where Jamar Chase is going to go. Jamar Chase knows what Joe Burrow is thinking. This is just and again, you want to get a quarterback in round 1 more often than not. But if it's not one of the top 4 guys, I think you can stray from quarterback and get one of, if not the elite wide receiver in fantasy football. Again, he's still young. There is no signs of Jamar Chase slowing down from a statistical perspective for many, many years. So I'm going to go with Jamar Chase here.
Yeah, and I'm with you. You don't want to reach on quarterback. And I know that's a very easy thing to do in these super flex drafts because you're always worried that you're going to get left without a quarterback or 2 quarterbacks. One of the things that we've talked about a lot on this podcast is there is depth at the quarterback position. There's a clear top 4, and then there's a pretty big gap. And we'll talk about the next group in a little bit. But even down to quarterback 15, 16, 17, you can get some really talented and young passers. So don't be afraid to take a top flight game-changing receiver like Jamar Chase. And that's why I'm taking Justin Jefferson at pick 107. Just like Chase, I mean, he's put up numbers from the moment that he's come into the league. He's a year older than Chase, which doesn't really worry me. He's been productive with every single quarterback that he's ever played with. I prefer Chase over Jefferson, but the gap is not very big, Fabs.
No, it's not. I mean, listen, it's really just, personal preference. Which LSU wide receiver do you want on your fantasy football team? In terms of statistics, they're super close. In terms of age, they're super close. So it really is personal preference. I just prefer to go with Jamar Chase because I know who the quarterback's going to be there for a long, long time. And that's going to be Joe Burrow. Justin Jefferson has proven that it doesn't really matter who the quarterback is. But for me, that's sort of the deciding factor is I'm going Burrow or if I'm going JJ McCarthy, although I do like McCarthy. He is certainly not Joe Burrow. So that's why I'm going to go with Jamar Chase there. But yeah, it's really personal preference. I mean, honestly, there's 4 wide receivers that if you called their names, I would not be shocked. And no matter what the order is, and we're probably going to talk about the next 2 coming up here soon.
Yeah, there are clear top 4 at receiver. We'll get to the other 2 guys in a second, but you are on the clock here at pick 107. I got a feeling where you're going, but why don't you let the listeners know?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to quarterback, and I'm going to go with Joe Burrow. He'll be 29 at the end of this season. Once again, one of, if not the best cast of characters from an offensive perspective in terms of the passing game around him. With Jamar and T. Higgins, they re-signed Mike Gesicki, who clearly made an impact last year for the Bengals, if not for fantasy managers. They've got a good young running back in Chase Brown. They're also always going to be playing the type of game where you need to score points because the Bengals defense is rarely great. So this is always going to be, and think about the teams that they have to play every year. I mean, you've got to play against Lamar Jackson a couple of times a year. There is going to always be production and offensive highlights from this group. And Joe Burrow is going to give you another 5 to 6 years of really high-end production. And that group's going to be together a long time. Remember, the Bengals, they locked in T. Higgins. They've locked in Jamar Chase, obviously with Burrow. So this offense is going to be stable. It's going to be together, and it's going to be one of the most productive in the NFL. I could have gone with another one of the top 4 wide receivers here, but I just rather go with Burrow at this point.
So there's nothing about Burrow that I don't love. I mean, I think he's the best pure pocket passer we have in the NFL. And I think he's the best one we've had since Tom Brady, like back in Tom Brady's prime. Like, he's so much fun to watch, but I got to be honest, the injuries make me nervous. I mean, he has a long injury history that just some of these other quarterbacks don't have. And I think you're always worried that, like, every time he gets hit, like, okay, is he okay? And that offensive line in Cincinnati is not great. They're not doing him any favors, especially in the interior. He also doesn't give you the rushing production. Again, I'm not nitpicking this pick. It's just, this is why he's going 7th rather than 3 or 4, because he's a much better quarterback than Jaden Daniels and Jalen Hurts. But he's going at 7 because there are some legitimate concerns.
So at 7, would you have gone away from Burrow and taken one of the last 2 wide receivers in the top 4?
Nope. I would have taken another quarterback.
There you go.
A different quarterback, who I would have picked.
Wait a minute. I got now I'm intrigued. Another quarterback?
Yeah, it's another quarterback. So let me give you the reason. I'm taking Patrick Mahomes at pick 108. And I understand the numbers the last couple of years have not been great. He has not been a fantasy difference maker. Like, I totally understand. But there is something in dynasty leagues when you have a quarterback that is going to be on the field playing for the next 10 years. Like, do you see Patrick Mahomes retiring in the next 10 years or so? Probably not, right? He's going to be attached to Andy Reid for the majority of his career. And I'm hopeful that Rashee Rice being healthy and Xavier Worthy finally give him enough star power. I understand on a week-to-week basis, we're going to be ranking him below all these guys. But there's just very few quarterbacks on this list that we feel great about being on the same team and playing well 5 years from now. And he's one of them. And we've seen him be an MVP before. We've seen him have 50 touchdowns in a season before. And last thing, Fabs, I would not be surprised after the way they got embarrassed in the Super Bowl if this isn't a little bit of a, hey, remember, I'm Patrick Mahomes season. And he puts up MVP numbers. They throw the ball a little bit more. And we see the passing production go way up.
The talent around him is certainly maybe the best he's ever had in terms of the passing game. When you talk about Rashee Rice, who you and I both absolutely love, and Xavier Worthy, and obviously Kelsey. But you also, I think, have to, and I am no fan of Patrick Mahomes in fantasy over the last couple of years. I've kind of been beating the drum about how
it's been rough.
It's not been good. I mean, he's a 17 point per game player who was once a 24 point per game player. And I wonder if Patrick Mahomes isn't just Troy Aikman the rest of his season, the rest of his career. Troy Aikman was one of the great quarterbacks in the NFL. He's a Hall of Famer. He won 3 Super Bowls. He was not a good fantasy quarterback. He was very average. Now, Mahomes is certainly much better than Aikman statistically, and he'll continue to be. But does Patrick Mahomes need to put up these big-time numbers in order for the Chiefs to win games? They've had a very good defense over the last few years. Maybe that's going to change a little bit this upcoming season. We'll find out. This is more to me like a little bit of a personal preference thing here too. I do have Patrick Mahomes as a first round pick in this sort of draft. I just wouldn't have taken him at 8. And maybe that's just me with the blinders on, seeing what I've seen over the last couple of years and thinking that his best statistical seasons are behind him. But the point that you make, Marcus, is a good one, that he's going to be around for a while. And even a modest Patrick Mahomes is going to give you 16, 17 points per game for the next, so many seasons.
Yeah, I just think he's such a good player and a good quarterback that the breakout seasons are going to come back. I mean, we saw Tom Brady after winning, 3 Super Bowls, and I don't think he threw for 30 touchdowns during that stretch at all. All of a sudden, his weapons around him get a little bit better, and now he's throwing for 50 touchdowns. And I know he had Randy Moss, but even after the Randy Moss seasons, there was a 36 touchdown season, a 39 touchdown season, 34. I don't think this Chiefs defense is going to continue to be one of the top 3 or 4 in the NFL because it's really, really hard to do that. And they've lost some guys on that side of the ball. So maybe they have to start throwing the ball more. Maybe the conference is just going to get a lot better and they can't win all of these 23 to 20 games. And they're going to have to go back to trying to win 31 to 28. Things happen really fast in the NFL. And again, with the improved weapons, they drafted Josh Simmons in the first round to maybe help their left tackle situation. Maybe this is what Mahomes needs to get back to that point. I think the other thing is, we'll move on in a second. I just have a hard time seeing his value going down in any significant way because it's Patrick Mahomes, right? Like, are you going to put Justin Herbert and some of these other quarterbacks ahead of him? Probably not. So I'm fine drafting him at 108. It's a fine pick.
Again, I have him as a first round pick in this kind of league, and I do have him behind Joe Burrow in a dynasty startup Superflex. Because a lot of it is what you said. I mean, am I going to take Kyler?
No.
Am I going to take Caleb Williams?
No.
Probably not. Am I going to take Herbert? No. So he kind of falls into that spot. I don't know that I ever see him being elite again.
Probably not.
Tom Brady, he had a slow rise. Tom Brady was not a great fantasy quarterback either. He wasn't.
No.
Like, go back and look at his numbers. He wasn't. He had a slow rise, and then all of a sudden, like Marcus said, you bring in a Randy Moss, and you bring a little bit more talent in there. You got Gronkowski in there, and then boom, all of a sudden, Tom Brady is putting up 50 TDs and just going absolutely bananas. Whereas Mahomes started off like that. Like, after sitting for a year, his numbers were just phenomenal, and then they started to slowly decline and drop. And he's going to lose Kelsey here probably in the next year or so. I'm sure Taylor Swift will be calling. There'll be some kind of situation where Kelsey's getting engaged to Taylor Swift. Oh, well, he's got to get out of football now. He's done everything he could do. So you're going to lose Kelsey. You never get to get him back because there's probably not going to be too many tight ends like him again. I agree with you to a point, but I would have gone with somebody else at 8.
Okay. So just to recap those picks: Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Joe Burrow, and Patrick Mahomes. How should the final 4 picks of your Superflex drafts go? We'll tell you next. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show. As training camps get closer and moves are being made, host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, you are on the clock. Pick 109. Where are you going?
You know where I'm going. I'm going CD Lamb.
Good
I don't see another quarterback being more valuable than some of the offensive skill position players that are on the board at running back and wide receiver. CD has long been a fantasy star. In fact, his star would have been even brighter had Dak Prescott not gotten hurt during his rookie campaign, because he was on pace to put up numbers just like Justin Jefferson. And then, of course, the wheels fell off with Cooper Rush. But CD Lamb is the alpha in Dallas. He and Dak Prescott, say what you want about Dak, they always produce very good numbers together. Dak is coming into the season healthy, maybe with a little chip on his shoulder, and that duo will be together for next at least 3 or 4 years. So I'm going CD Lamb here. Young guy, prime of his career, always going to put up big numbers. And we also don't know what that Cowboys defense is going to look like. They have a very difficult schedule moving forward, at least in 2025. So the Cowboys are going to have to score some points, and CD Lamb is going to benefit from that.
I mean, I know how it's going to look. It's not going to look great. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot. You look at like their schedule to start the year. They are going to be in some shootout games because of how poor their defense probably is. But again, that's redraft stuff. Long term, Dak Prescott, CD Lamb, one of the best connections we've had in the league. They're both locked up for the next 4 years together. So pretty stable situation. He's locked into a bunch of targets. He's also incredibly young. He's 26. You're going to get him for the next 5 years at playing elite football. At pick 10, I'm going with Malik Neighbors. It's been 3 picks since we've had an LSU guy, so we got to go back.
We're overdue.
And honestly, you could pick Malik Neighbors at wide receiver 3. You can make an argument for him even higher. I wouldn't do it just because we don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be like, but He's 22 years old, coming off a 1,200-yard rookie season, despite playing with Daniel Jones for the first half of the year, Drew Lock, and then Tommy DeVito when they were trying to tank games. We'll see what Jackson Dart has, but I got to believe that Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston are still going to be upgrades over what he had last year. The long-term situation is a little bit more up in the air just because they've got to get the quarterback right, but he's a lot like Justin Jefferson to me, where I just think he's going to be able to produce no matter who's at quarterback because he's that special of a player.
And I love Malik Neighbors. I think you could make an argument for him being the number one wide receiver in this mock, even ahead of Jamar. The numbers that he put up last year, like you said, with 4 guys who are just not great quarterbacks. I would argue, though, and this is not going to happen, but I would argue that if you're looking strictly at 2025, Malik Neighbors would have a chance to put up the best numbers if Jameis Winston were the quarterback for the entire
100%,
season.
100%. Yes.
Like the Giants
won't
ain't
happen
winning
because-
games. But
Yeah.
I mean, like what he did to Jerry Jeudy last year. Holy crap. You know what I mean?
I-
Like Jerry Jeudy became a superstar. So again, I mean, that's a conversation we can, have off air, but he's phenomenal. And 22 years old, LSU pedigree, nothing I don't like about Malik Neighbors, except for the fact that he plays for the Giants.
There you go. All right. You are on the clock here at pick 111, your final pick of this round 1 mock draft. Who you taking?
It's amazing how things have changed because we've seen a lot of quarterbacks and wide receivers go and no running backs, but now I'm going to go with Bijan Robinson.
Good pick.
Back in the day, this kind of draft would have had more running backs in round 1. It doesn't. And there's a reason for that. But Bijan Robinson is a guy who is coming off a breakout season. He is young. He's going into his 3rd NFL campaign. So he's got a long time to be putting up great numbers in an offense that should produce. This could be a fun offense to watch. I know Marcus loves Michael Penix Jr. and Drake London, and I certainly am fans as well. But Bijan Robinson will be the centerpiece of this offense. Atlanta's offensive line is solid. So it's crazy. The next to last pick in the 1st round is your first running back, but that's where we are in the world of fantasy football right now, and certainly in the Superflex league even more so. But I'm going with Bijan Robinson, who to me is the best running back in fantasy football right now.
Another reason why this pick makes sense here at pick 111 is because you're guaranteed to get a quarterback here with your next pick, whether it ends up being Justin Herbert or Caleb Williams or Drake May, or name your quarterback, right? Like
Tyler Wright, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, you're going to be able to get a guy, so you're not stressing out too much.
Mhm.
Whereas if you were to take a Herbert here, you're not getting Bijan Robinson at pick, what would that be, 1-4?
Yeah.
Or 2-2. You're not getting it there. So I love Bijan. I think he should be the first running back off the board. That offense, I think everything sets up for them to have a big year because the defenses in that division are terrible. Bijan's only 23, and the Falcons have him under contract for the next 3 years. Love that pick. I'm to finish out this draft, Fabs, pick 112, our final pick. I'm taking my guy, Brock Bowers. And I know it's early to take
you
a tight end.
are. I mean, listen, Brock Bowers needs to hire you as his agent, man, or at least his PR guy. My God, you love it.
He's
Amon
going at
Ra,
11
huh?
right now in ADP. So I'm getting a good value on Brock Bowers here. But I watched the other day every target from Brock Bowers during the 2024 season. And it's a miracle that he got to 1,200 yards. Like it's honestly crazy how productive he was, despite how terrible the quarterback play was. I know the ADOT was low, but he was so good after the catch. He made plays all over the field. And I think Geno just is going to provide some stability at that position. They don't have any other pass catchers that keep you up at night, right? Like it's Jacoby Myers and Jack Besh and Deontay Thornton. He's going to get 150 targets. I think Brock Bowers is the new Travis Kelce. And yes, he doesn't have Patrick Mahomes, but he is just as talented. He's 22 years old, and I'm taking him at pick 112.
What I want to know is how long does it take to watch 153 targets
It's
on
about
film?
35 minutes.
That's it?
Yeah, it's not too bad.
I was going to say, you're a married man. Your wife may be like, Marcus, the children are waiting for you.
Okay.
Why are you watching 153 targets of an NFL player?
Why are you watching Desmond Ridder for fun right now? I know it's rough, but I do think it was important to see like just how good Bowers was despite bad quarterback situation. I love him. If I can pick him at pick 112 and then turn right around and get a Justin Herbert, or if you want to go anti-quarterback and take like a Ashton Genty or Jahmyr Gibbs, that's a really fun start if you're kind of a late round quarterback guy in Superflex drafts.
You know what I was watching last night, by the way? My cousin is in town from Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
Cannonball Run.
There you go.
Have you seen that?
I have.
Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a glorious movie. It's so great. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. Sometimes I go off the rails.
That's all right. Let's recap this draft. Josh Allen at 1, Lamar Jackson at 2, Jaden Daniels at 3, Jalen Hurts at 4, Jamar Chase at 5, Justin Jefferson at 6, Joe Burrow at 7. That's 3 LSU guys in a row. Patrick Mahomes at 8, CeeDee Lamb at 9, Malik Neighbors at 10, Bijan Robinson at 11, and then Brock Bowers to round out round 1. Final thoughts before we head out?
I think it's mostly chalk. I'm not a big Mahomes fan. I have him in the first round. I wouldn't have taken him there. I would have taken, wide receiver and CeeDee Lamb. A little bit surprised Amon-Ra didn't go in the first round, but my guess is that he probably would have gone in the next 2 picks in round 2. But other than that, it is amazing to see, and this has kind of been, this has been what's happened over the last few years, is that the wide receiver position has taken over the running back position as the lifeblood position of fantasy football. And the quarterbacks that went in round 1, I think there's no surprise in the Superflex.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Make sure you tune in on Wednesday for our show with Matt Williamson. He always provides excellent insight. Go follow Fabs on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms, and we'll see you right back here on Wednesday.